Hi, I'm Paula Nowak, and I'm a member of the presentation committee for CanBeWell. Welcome to CanBeWell presentation, Heart-Centered Wellness with Dr. Christine Bair. She is the author of The Heart Field Effect, what it is, how it works, and why it matters. Our vision is creating a world where the many bioenergetic wellness disciplines and modalities are recognized, valued, and utilized as people make choices to improve their quality of life. Our mission as champions of personal choice in health and wellness, our members work together, encouraging ongoing professional development in the field of bioenergetic wellness to better provide services and education to the public. Wellness is your choice in 2021, supporting you, your family, colleagues in self-care and personal well-being in 2021. And you can choose from a variety of offerings from CanBeWell workshops, community outreach programs, and our CanBeWell membership supports our many programs as we connect, learn, and become advocates. Our advocacy and outreach is through a variety of media channels that are listed through our public and member newsletters and through canbewell.org. And our presenter today is Dr. Christine Caldwell Bair, and has been referred to by her peers as the scientific mystic. With 4 decades of experience, 3 licenses, and multiple certifications in healthcare, she is one of the few professionals holding a PhD in the emerging field of energy medicine and a doctorate in theology and spiritual healing. As the developer of what she calls heart-centered wellness, Dr. Bair bridges multiple disciplines in facilitating individuals and groups in uncovering their own innate abilities for health and healing. Please welcome Dr. Bair to CanBeWell's presentation program. Welcome, Dr. Bair.
Oh, thank you so much, Paula. Thank you for having me, and how lovely it is to actually connect with what sounds like a very compatible group of our northern friends. I'm here in the States, but I think your concepts of bioenergetic wellness and my concept of heart-centered wellness have a great deal of overlap and similarities, and perhaps are just different languages for the same thing. So I'm very happy to be here today and to have the opportunity to share with you an overview of heart-centered wellness, and then I would like to leave at least a third or half of our time, we'll see how it goes, for your questions. From as I understand it, most of you are already probably quite well versed in different aspects of emerging energy medicine. So what I hope to do is give us a big picture, a context, a framework to put all of what we already know and all that we're learning so rapidly into a larger picture that's comprehensive and in which we can see the connections and the relationships between the different parts of it that are expand our ability both for us to be well personally and for us to be able to help and facilitate others in connecting with their innate wellness so that all of us as the body of humanity can grow into who we are capable of being and creating the kind of world we all want to live in. So I thank you for that. I thought I'd start off just briefly with an explanation of what the heart field is and what I see happening in the world and its relevance in terms of wellness. And then let's see where we go from there. But in reading from the heart field, just quickly, it said, the heart field is a holographic energy vehicle encompassing all of the dimensions of our human being. It provides us with a way of knowing who we are at the deepest level of experienced reality. Understanding it at even a very basic level provides the conceptual framework that integrates all of the parts into a unified whole. It allows us to make sense of what seemed before to be disparate, unconnected parts of ourselves. It's congruent with all that we know of both larger and smaller whole systems. And beyond our understanding our own personal function better, it relocates human being back within the living matrix of all of life at every level. It shifts our perceptions of who we are from an outside observer to an integral aspect of the larger whole, whose thoughts, feelings, and behavior have impact not just on ourselves, but also in the environment around us. The heart field provides us an energetic explanation for the dimension of our beings, how they are connected and interact, and how to consciously access each or all of them at will and with intention. So in the book, we go on then to talk about different parts of that. I wanted to create, in writing it a number of years ago, I wanted to create a general handbook for people to be able to kind of wrap our minds around what is this huge shift we all are aware of going through. We're in our sciences and certainly within the health and wellness industries and arenas. We've come to understand that we are not just physical bodies, but that we are at our most basic, our essence is that of energetic beings, and that we're not separate from the whole, but we are an integral part of what this has been called the living matrix. None of us can be on the planet today without some awareness of how rapidly many shifts are going on at all these levels, both personal human levels, also with the planet herself. And so as wellness facilitators, we want to be in a position both to be our own truest and best self, because I believe we are the tool, and our ability to be a helper or a facilitator for someone else is entirely dependent on our own being well, and our own practices and the energetic field, the heart field that we bring to the spaces we occupy. As Jill Bolte Taylor said a few years back after she was recovering, she's a neurologist who had a massive stroke and took months to recover. But as she got into touch with the more energetic parts of our being, and saw some of the implications of that beyond the neurological training she had had before, she understands that as energy beings, that we are responsible for the energy that we bring into the spaces that we occupy. And I try to hold that personally and professionally as a goal and something to keep in front of my awareness, certainly as I go throughout my own days and living my own life, and also in my work with others. So in terms of health and wellness, we have always regarded human beings as body, mind, and spirit. But in the old paradigm of seeing materialistically, of seeing things as separate and unconnected, in our healthcare setting, we looked at the physical body. And so our current medical industry at this point is set up around just looking at we took the body apart and looked at the pieces parts and saw how they all fit together and tried to put them back together well when they weren't working so well. And then about 100 years, that's been going on for a couple hundred years. And then about 100 years ago, give or take a couple decades, we gradually understood that we weren't just a body, we were a body and we had a mind. We had a brain and a mind, that the two of them operated together, and yet our study of them has largely, that became the beginnings of psychology and psychiatry. But in recognizing that our thoughts and our neurological function of our brain and our central nervous system have a huge impact on our wellness. And so operating kind of from two different camps, but with a lot of overlap over the past 150 years, we've understood health as a combination of those two parts. Interestingly, the part that never got mentioned or talked about was in body, mind, spirit, was what we called spirit, which today I would call in our wisdom traditions and religious traditions, it would still be called spirit. In the world of science, we probably now would refer to that as consciousness. So there has been no agreed upon definition of what consciousness is, and yet it's the connecting link between all these different dimensions of our being. And so a key facet for heart-centered wellness is bringing our consciousness is into this larger arena that we're finding ourselves growing into. I really believe that we're in an evolutionary leap of humanity, from one state of being, from our awareness, our consciousness of our physical being, which we've had and worked on for years, and then the awareness that we have a mental aspect that we also can interact with and work with, to now recognizing that what we've called spirit or consciousness is a whole new level of consciousness. And when I'm talking about consciousness, I would say that's our awareness, our experience, our lived experience. And when we talk about wellness for all of us, after we peel away all the other layers and things we talk about, it all comes, what matters to us in life, our experience of life, is what we experience. And when we talk about what we experience, it always, when you tease out the stories that go with it, it always ends up being the connections and relationships in the events that have happened to us, the other people we interact with, the experiences we have in the world, and within ourselves, how we feel about that. And if it acts in a positive and constructive growth producing manner within us, or if we interpret those things that happen to us in a negative way that diminishes our sense of who we are and our ability to be well. So if I will make a jump here and go back to a moment for us as energy beings. So then a question we should ask if we're interested in wellness is, so what are the implications of that? If we're energy rather than just static matter and separate from everything else, how does that understanding impact our well-being? And in what ways, if any, does it redirect our attention and our practices and our work if we want to be our truest and most healthy self? And so to go back to square one, I would have to say that as part of the living matrix that we are, as we understand energy, we are awakening to what I think eventually will be called holographic health. Right now, you'll hear it referred to as energy medicine or vibrational medicine. A lot of energy awareness coming, certainly diagnostically and increasingly therapeutically, into the awareness that frequency, light, sound, all of these invisible aspects and dimensions of our being impact our wellness, and beyond impact it, actually regulate it. So way back 15 years plus or minus at this point, I did a research project that actually demonstrated that as bodies of energy, that we are not separate from each other or the world or everything around us. So in holographic health, the science of that is rapidly being unpacked for us by quantum physics and quantum mechanics. And the process of how that plays out for our human wellness is often revealed in fractal geometry. And so together, they give us a bigger picture of who we are, and they embed us in this matrix of life as not something that is separate. It is a discrete energy field, but it unfolds according to the same principles as all of life. And within that, and not only for ourselves, but for the world around us and others with whom we're in relationship with, it affects them as well. And so both as practitioners in search of our own particular wellness, our own personal wellness, and certainly for those of us who are our heart's desire is to be of help and facilitating others to be their most healthy and whole self. It behooves us to continue to grow in and learn as much as we can, which at this point is rapidly happening to us. So we're learning in leaps and bounds, but it's completely reframing how we understand. And it's shifting the direction of our perceptions. Um, and as our perceptions shift, what we take in, and then mentally at the mental level, when we perceive differently, how we think about it and what patterns that fits into change. And then as our consciousness expands beyond those two levels, which largely happen on automatic 95% of the time. Our body just, our hearts beat, we breathe, our stomachs digest, all our body parts work without our paying too much attention to them most of the time, other than putting in some fuel in the source of food and water and liquid and breathing. So we have that input, but our bodies mostly take care of themselves. Our mind and our thoughts will go on endlessly, as those of us who are meditators have discovered. They'll just go all over the place, and that it's nonstop. Mental happens, thoughts happen, and they just will go all over the place, left undirected, but they never stop. So when we talk, once we have learned what the wisdom traditions largely up until this point have kept for us through the ages, that there is another level of being, and it too is not separate. It's the larger part of who we are, but it's taken us longer to get in touch with that, perhaps because it's the invisible part, perhaps because most of our awareness of that has come down to us through the different religious and spiritual and wisdom traditions of the world. And certainly at least 500 years back for those of us in Western thinking, there was an agreement of both medicine, the emerging sciences, which included medicine and biology, from the teachings of the different wisdom traditions and religions. When they started coming into conflict, first in the astrological realm of Galileo and Copernicus, in seeing that the world was not the earth was not the center of the universe. In fact, it was the sun. And then at the point where we recognize the sun is not the center of the universe either, it's only the center of our solar system. So on those more scientific levels, they were getting into disagreements. And so there's this not a tacit understanding that science would pursue the study of the physical realm and nature and what we could see, and the more what they called esoteric, invisible realities that we all experience and are aware of, would be left to the wisdom traditions and to the different religious structures. So we have suffered for the last 500 years from the separation of these two things, the positive in them, as they've kept both things alive. But at this point, it's a disservice to our understanding and our well-being to keep them separate. As we grow more and more into understanding of energy and how it works, we know that nothing is separate, that everything comes in wholes. And this fractal unfolding, as each of us is, for instance, a fractal or a discrete particular expression of a human being. We might be a fractal of all of humanity, and humanity a fractal of something else. But we are certainly, as we've learned, embedded in this living matrix. And we have been blessed with something we call consciousness or spirit, which is really one way of talking about our awareness, our ability to be aware in these dimensions. So in terms of our health and in terms of helping others, what we're talking about is this in this shift that we're undergoing, is that our consciousness has and is expanding beyond where it was before we understood ourselves as mental beings, the thoughts create and mind, and physical beings that had bodies and could perform actions. So this expansion involves consciousness itself expanding. And what is it expanding beyond? It's expanding beyond just our mental function, which has been the primary focus of our human evolution over the past several hundred, perhaps several thousand years, in which we've developed our mind. And out of that, with our bodies, then could develop different technologies and industries and ways of working in the world that weren't present to us before we started becoming aware of thought and exploring that. But then we have also learned energetically that energy follows patterns. And what are these patterns? As we learned about the mental aspects, first Freud and then Jung and then many others, Sagliani, all start talking about another dimension to our being. David Bohm has more recently, brought this into our awareness that we are whole, and what he would call the implicate order is a part of this living matrix, which we're all part of. And so our mental capacities have served us well to help it, they pattern sort, if you will, the incoming perceptions of that are coming into to our awareness every day. And what they do by default is pattern sort according to what's been called archetypes. Jung, I created that term of patterns of energy that give us a place that just our brain will turn on default, a particular reaction or response to a particular pattern when it's turned on. Sometimes that's very helpful. It serves a great function of us not having to individually be aware of and process the gazillion things that happen to us in the day. The negative aspect of it, though, is that it can only be related to what has already happened in the past. It doesn't have an ability to differentiate truth from falsehood. And by itself, it can only do this pattern recognition. And so we're called upon to have a larger awareness now if in moving forward in life, and we have to become conscious at this let me backtrack to just say at our mental level and our physical level, we have this 5 sensory awareness of our experience that we're all familiar with. The mental level of thought adds another way of thinking about it, but as I say, restricts us to comparing patterns and past, and can't differentiate between what's true or not true. And so those things alone, and adding on to that, many wisdom masters from the past telling us that we don't solve the problems that we have created with from that sphere. We have to go into a whole new sphere in which to do that. And so this is the sphere I'd like to talk about, the sphere of the heart. And it's news to many people. As a matter of fact, most are still aware of it, is that what we're talking about in this great shift for human beings is the expansion of our consciousness beyond the physical, beyond the mental, to this larger sphere of the heart. And so our biofield, or what I named our heart field back when I was doing the research that demonstrated what I tagged the heart field effect, which is demonstrated that by showing a synchronization of heart rates between people, and a shift in both their physical sensations and their mental states, without any kind of technique or use of anything, let us, demonstrated that we actually are interconnected and are always affecting others, whether we're aware of it or not. And so being able to develop consciousness at the level of heart connects us with a sense that we're just growing as humans. It's always been there. We call it frequently it's called intuition. It's just that felt sense. It's much more connected with our feelings and our body sensations, that it is the emotion or mental interpretation our brain immediately puts on it when it looks for, oh, what pattern does this frequency fit into from the past? Turn that on. And so when we're just operating on automatic, that's pretty well how we function. As we develop our ability to become aware, to become conscious at the level of our heart, then we, just like we have a choice of being able to redirect our thoughts or physically to change our activity and our behavior, as we become conscious at the level of our heart, we then become aware that we have a choice of what we take in, and on the feeling level that adjusts our energy frequencies. I've discovered over the years, decades that I've been working with this now, that the heart is the intersection for all these dimensions of our human being. And that's the reason, the necessity behind our need to expand our consciousness to the level of our heart and frequency and feeling function at this point, for us to move forward as a human race and as human beings in our own individual particular lives and in the larger sphere of human life here on the planet. And as in all of holograms, there's larger levels up that impacts and the smaller levels down. When we're talking about our healthcare, we're usually talking about the smaller levels down, us as a discrete individual, and then how our body is working and how the different energies affect that. So at the moment, when we start growing into a new level of our human being, as we're growing into this holographic consciousness and awareness, what we first do once we realize parts of it and is use the old tools and the old methods that we have to try to learn how to work with it, what it's about. And so a fair percentage of holistic techniques and gadgets and this and that at this point is trying to use outside objects, whether they're natural objects like crystals or essential oils or things from nature, or the technology geek parts who really like to use just frequency adjustments themselves, just adjusting a frequency. Or people who are using both light and sound, which profoundly, light is the visible frequencies and sound is the audible frequencies, that both of which create patterns of sound creates a pattern. Light then is the first visible filling in of that pattern into something visible, and that precipitates on down until to our taking that in, our thinking about it, and out of our thinking then building, using our bodies to create things in the world. And so there's a whole process that goes on there, and all of those things impact it. But how they impact it and how well we're able to interact within that sphere with awareness, with consciousness and awareness, depends on our ability to direct our own attention, which we can do both with our bodies, our choices of, we all know we have a choice of what we do in a day. Am I going to spend my time here, there, doing whatever? Of with our thoughts, that when we choose to, we can redirect our thinking from wherever it's just going on automatic. We can focus it at a particular place, and our mental apparatus immediately complies. So we have the choice to direct our thought or our attention, choosing what to take in. And then as we grow into the consciousness at the level of our heart, we grow into a recognition of the importance of our intention. And that's an acknowledgement that we're not only taking in, but that as energetic beings, we're also sending out. And so with every heartbeat, let me just hop real briefly to that. In vibrational and energetic medicine, everything is looked at in frequency ranges and chords, much like music, which combines different frequencies, different sounds to make chords and then put them together in a dynamic and flowing fashion to make music. That a similar sort of process is going on in each of us. And it's affected by all that comes to us that we take in. And our heart beat, we all have been taught, and certainly does, pump our blood around through our body. So on the physical level, it does that. And thank goodness, as long as it does that, we're alive. When it stops, we're not. But it does so much more than that. And that's what we're growing into a growing awareness of and learning about. So what our heart does with each beat is serve as the intersection and connecting points for all the perceptions and environmental cues that are coming in, environmental being the outside environment outside of us, but also our internal environment of our state of mind, of our state physiologically, of our state of being. And what it does is with each heartbeat, in addition to pumping blood around, puts out a set of frequencies, which we might most easily imagine as chords of music, that then give instruction to every cell of our inside us, to every cell of our body, to every organ, to every system, that coordinates all the biochemical reactions, all the thoughts we think, all the production of hormones and so forth, that keep our body functioning in a healthy manner. and also in the neurological states of producing what we think of as the um, stress chemical hormones that regulate things like stress. And so from the very smallest level inside us to each of our cells, through the waters of our body, which carry sound and frequency much better than the air does, our heartbeat conveys to every cell of our body, 50 or 60 trillion of them, with every heartbeat, what that cell's job is within that organ, what that organ's need is within the larger system, within the whole body. And then, so inside it keeps regulating both in two directions, I might add, from what the information that comes back to us of what's needed by the different parts of our body, and then sending out them what actions or output is needed from them. So internally that happens. And at the same time, lesser coming understood, but now beginning to be looked at, is that not only happens within our body, but externally, it also radiates out into the environment around us, and beyond that, actually, those same frequency harmonies. And so what we're doing with every breath, that those of you who practice yoga and other disciplines like that recognize, with our breath, we take in air and our lungs are on either side of our heart. They pick up vibrationally in those few seconds they're in our lungs, what our feeling tone, our frequency ranges are, and then we expire when we exhale, when we expire them out into our environment. We're part of contributing to the adjustment of life. The one quality of life, if we have to say just one quality, what is life? We have to recognize it's dynamic. It's always moving, always changing. And so what we come to realize is that every feeling, every thought, every breath that we take is affecting us internally and is being projected out and contributing to the shifting archetypes that are out there for the collective as a whole, and for the world and nature at large. So on multiple levels, we're immersed in all of these levels. And so everything we think, feel, say, and do affects not just ourselves, but certainly, but all of the rest of humanity, of all else. So as we have a growing recognition of this interconnection and interdependence, we also then are aware that what we do affects everybody else and what others do affects us. And so that feels very different to us. As we begin to grasp that, it gives us a different perceptual framework to think about our own life. None of us can just say, oh, I'm an individual, so everything is just my choice and it doesn't affect anybody else. Everything we do and say has some effect, no matter how minute, on all of life everywhere, that which we know and perhaps on that which we don't know, since we are aware that energy, parts of it operate within time space, but there's also a non-local quality to it that those of us in the healing professions recognize when we talk about non-local healing, that when we are able to send forth an intention, with our directed making a choice and choosing an intention and directing it to a particular person or place or situation, that we're able to affect all of those things. So we're just beginning to grasp what I expect is the tip of the iceberg of what our human powers are and what we're capable of and what we're called to. So on the energy level, I want to let me just briefly say one more thing, and then I think I'll stop, and I'd prefer to hear. I know many of you practice with light, with sound, with crystals, with Reiki, yoga, different healing modalities. And so hopefully, as I've talked, some questions have come up for you about your own work or your own understanding. And I would really, we could talk about these things for a very long time, but I would prefer to direct the rest of our time to what will be helpful to you, or if any of this has been confusing or you'd like a piece filled in. So just recognizing what we basically know of energy from the science is that in waveforms and frequencies that they operate by waveform is a transportation system that information flows on. And that as the different waveforms of energy interact with each other, as all these dimensions coexist in time and space, They either, if they're congruent with the energies they're interacting with, they amplify it. If they're the opposite of it, they negate it entirely, they make it disappear. And the amplification, by the way, can happen in either direction of a waveform, of what we call the positive or the negative. And so we talk about adjusting frequencies. In holistic health, we hear a lot about higher frequencies, and in the wisdom traditions as well. But what I'd like us to, if we took a single perception from today that would be helpful, I think it would be to shift our own awareness or thinking from higher, lower, broader to add another dimension, just a third dimension, make it more spherical. And when we understand things, that where we're going isn't on a continuum going in a linear fashion, in just two dimensions, it's spherical. And so we're going from body, of just the physical part, to mind, the mental sphere, which we've been working on, to a new sphere out, which I call heart, or we would call spirit, which encompasses body and mind. And it's within larger spheres still that we would call the collective humanity or collective life, depending how far out we want to go. But all of these energies are constantly interacting. As we become aware of them, as we focus, what we feel can determine our ability to respond and choose how to react within this larger sphere, rather than just having it operate on automatic. The key practice we use to do that is meditation, something I call heart meditation, and others do as well. But the difference, it's like the next step beyond mindfulness meditation, which we hear a lot about nowadays, is really, really helpful as people just become aware that they can direct of what their mind is doing, and that they're able to direct it, and focus their attention and direct it is helpful. But that's not an end point. That's the first step then to knowing that when we can direct our mental attention, then we have a choice of where to direct it. And on our inner self and our inner well-being, all the practices of meditation deal with our breath and doing that, and inner awareness. What I think of as what we're embodying as we learn to direct our thought and to focus, in addition to paying attention to our breathing, our awareness of our dynamic expansion and contraction of life, we can next step become aware of our heartbeat. And actually, let's just do that for a moment together. It's just sitting still, as we still our physical body in a fairly upright but relaxed posture, and close our eyes so that we're shifting our awareness from the outer world, that which appears to be outside of us happening, to shifting our awareness to inside of us. And then all the meditation techniques you may have studied, next go to the breath, and becoming aware of our breathing in, of our expanding our lungs and taking in the external environment in, and then in breathing out, sending back out that which we no longer need, as well as the frequencies that our heart has implanted on it, and distributing that in the world. And then the add-on to that in heart meditation is, after what would be a season of a few minutes of breathing and becoming aware of our breath and our inner being, is to notice your heartbeat. Some of you might just, in directing your attention to your heart, to the physical location of your physical heart, be able to feel it there. Sometimes you can feel that beating in the center of your chest. Often you may feel it somewhere else in any part of your body, or even outside of your body. Some of you may feel it as a sensation of a beat. Some of you may hear the sound of a heartbeat. Some of you may just sense it's beating. And it's certainly perfectly fine to put a thumb of one hand on the inside, at the base of your thumb, on the wrist of the other hand. If you can't sense it initially just with sensing it, to actually feel the physicality of your heartbeat. That's your own particular life maestro, if you will, of the orchestra you know of as you. Not only circulating your blood throughout your body, but radiating frequencies of all that you are feeling, because the language of energy and heartbeat is not words, it's feeling. And the embodiment of that, the feeling, the sensation in your body, gives you the feedback of how congruent that is, coherent it is within your body, mind, and spirit, if they're working in harmony together, or if there's an area that is blocked or incongruent with either thoughts that are distressing to us, or parts of our body that need attention, parts or things that spirit is consciousness is trying to call to our attention. The energy world is a constant feedback loop. And so just let's spend just about 30 seconds in silence and just feel your heartbeat and just pay attention to that inner awareness consciously. Ah, thank you. I'm aware of our collective consciousness and the joining of our heart fields in this arena today. As I do that, that's a very strong presence of the group that is here, and our conjoined hearts as we all learn and grow and work together, both to live our truest self and our truest life and our purpose here in the world, and also to help others make that their reality and their growth as well. So I think that probably is a good place for me to stop here and invite thoughts, questions, comments that we could use the rest of our time in any particular way that would make this more useful or helpful to you.
That was beautiful, Christine. So we'll take some questions. People can either come on camera and unmute themselves, or they can put questions in the chat box and you can choose.
Actually, I'm not seeing the chat box, Paula, so if you would
I'll read it.
if we get to me, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, if we get questions in there. And it says Brain Gym, I'm thinking, is that Dana? Okay, if you can unmute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that beautiful articulation, Christine. I had two questions that came up. One was, normally I've always thought of body, mind, emotions, and spirit, or heart and spirit, you know? And so I know some people equate emotions with body as being part of the body. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, if that makes any sense to you, what I'm asking.
It does. And actually that's an excellent question. So thank you for asking it. We've tended to glom together in our culture feelings and emotions as if they were the same thing. We have a profound misunderstanding of them. But I differentiate and would talk about feelings as the energetic bodily sensation when I say feeling. And then emotion, or energy in motion, is the mental aspect of that. It's as soon as our body sensations immediately, in fractions of a second, our brain looks for what pattern does this bodily sensation fit into that I know within my own experience, from what I thought, my ancestors, whatever, and it on default turns on the emotion that goes with that: anger, frustration, joy, peace, whatever, and we automatically feel that. But that's our emotion. And so when we work with energy, we can work with the emotions, and that can take us back as far as what pattern this comes out of, and that's helpful. But what we find as therapists when we're working in that capacity over the years is people keep having to come back to have their thoughts retrained. It's helpful to, but And that's because the pattern, the emotional pattern is still stuck there in the physiology because we're not dealing with a felt sensation. And so what you're seeing more and more helpfully is people attending to the felt sensation of when people express an emotion, of guiding them to where in your body do you feel that? Describe the sensation. Is that dull or sharp? And that's actually even what doctors do physically. If you go in with a physical complaint, was it a sharp pain or a dull pain? Is it intermittent or is it there all the time? So as we take people to embodying a spirit or heart, I'm finding increasingly, because spirit has so much political and emotional context to it, that people are using the word heart to say the same thing. So I think of as consciousness at the heart level. So, and whatever term people want to use is fine. But that's what I see happening. And so I see this growing edge of our consciousness in embodying this level of it, not just having it as a useful concept in our brain. And so in order to embody it, we have to deal with the physical sensation, the feeling, the frequencies, the energetics of that. And that's what we shift energetically, whether we're aware or not, all the time. When someone is in our emotional and our personal heart field space, they feel energized or drained, or it affects them and they feel it. And so for us personally, and then working with people, as we become aware that that goes on, that increases our privilege and responsibility of being responsible for who we want to be, and are we bringing into the space the spaces we occupy, the energy that's creating the kind of life and experience and relationships and world that we want to live in. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's great. Yeah, and it all seems also congruent with it does not in many way to me contradict anything that I understand, but it makes it clear. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, and we've been doing this technologically in this transition season of human evolution. So a lot of the popular things out there, different gadgets and things that will adjust frequencies. I think of them much like the chiropractor that can adjust our spine, but if we keep doing the same old patterns after we walk out, it doesn't take long to come back in. So I think that the gadgets are a transition device to help people in the short term experience some things or shift the energies that maybe we don't quite know how to yet. But then as we move forward, I think the ultimate goal of that is not to become dependent upon that, but to learn internally how to make those same adjustments for ourselves. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have another question if nobody else is going. So this is a smaller one, really. I do brain gym, and Dr. Paul Dennison talked about the idea that from some of the research that's been done, the idea that our neurological systems in our brains developed originally way back in the evolution to navigate. That was the survival value, was that in order to navigate the world, we had to be able to control our movements, which takes a lot of neurology, and also to be able to sort out where we are, all those sensory motor things that were necessary. And I'm thinking, as you talked about the heart, now I realize this is a much bigger concept than just our beating heart, but I sort of got the idea from what you're saying that maybe possibly the heart evolved for the purpose of connection. And I'm just be interested in if that is at all interesting for you to talk about a little bit, where you think this whole heart and circulatory system came involved beyond the as you talked about, the scientific revolution based idea of our body as a separate parts that work together, but I mean in the bigger context of where the heart and the circulation system evolved.
Well, actually, the heart and circulation system evolved before the brain and the nervous system. In today's world, in the medical and biological worlds, we tend to have thought for some time and continue to, the vast majority of people think of our brain and our nervous system as the regulator of our body and our human life. And what we're discovering as we unpack what it means to be beings of energy, fields, and energetic things, we're learning that the brain is just what you said at first. That was very well put. It's kind of in charge of our 5 sensory processing and our bodily health with that. But what we're finding is that the brain is not the maestro. The heart is the maestro. The brain is the more philosophical amongst the things say that mind makes a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And so it's not that it's wrong what it does, but most of the work we're doing is brainwave entrainment. And so, and of course that occurs. It occurs on multiple levels, and it's been exciting. And that's where a lot of the research and attention is at the moment. What we'll find, and what my research documented years ago, is our hearts also synchronize. And so this is, it is, and that is the leap forward, as you rightly put your finger on for us, is our brain is doing that internally for our 5 senses and our particular self. Our heart is the intersection, literally, at the physical level, at the mental level, and for the emotional level and the spirit, what we call the spiritual level. It's where all those different domains intersect within our human body and our human life. And so that's the point where we can access, if you think of all the different like medicine wheels and astrological wheels and all the 12 section wheels we look at, the center point there is what I would think of as consciousness or awareness. That's the point where they intersect. And within our human wellness and our human physical body, our heart is the organ. It's been called our organ of spiritual perception. And so while this so energetically, it perceives the energies that happen to us, and it really is a universal feedback system. Whatever is happening to us affects our environment. Bruce Lipton's done a lot of work with this in terms of cell biology, both the external environment and the internal environment that we create with our thoughts of whether something is stressful to us or not. He's pointed out is, it's not what happens to us that determines that. It's our interpretation, what we think that means. That's whether it's harmful to us or not. And so as we adjust these things, we're really shifting into a whole larger sphere of seeing and understanding. And for us as therapists or people helping others, it also shifts the direction of what we need to focus on to be effective, from out there and learning techniques and doing it, to recognize that we're the tool. And so all these other things we're doing work and are fine. They're certain, but if we are not grounded and centered and have a practice of meditation of some sort, which is a way of inner knowing, it's not some religious practice. It's a change of directing our attention to internally and being receptive to information that we get from, and when we're able, that intersection is in our heart field. And so when we are able to learn to direct through constant practice our attention at that level, we're able to collect to what Casey used to call the Akashic field, or the record of the collective, because at that level, that is the level of unity of where we all recognize our part, that we're all part of a greater one.
Thank you.
So thank you for both of those questions.
Christine, I'm not sure if you can see the chat, but I'll read to you a few of the comments that have been put down there and may spark a few things. So I'll just begin with the last one. Natasha talked about, we need to find a way to connect back to ourselves in order to fully realize all that is connected to us and how we influence our being and being influenced by that.
Yes.
And Tanya mentions, we are responsible for the energy we bring to the spaces we occupy. Michelle mentions, sound, frequency, and emotions regulate our health. This is such a simple claim, but such a profound reason to be aware in the world.
Yes. Oh, beautiful. Yes, thank you. Clearly everybody gets this.
Yeah. And one more.
Oh, good.
This is from Mary Joy. A takeaway for me, your heartbeat is your maestro of the orchestra. That is you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And so, yes, if I have a final encouragement to everybody, what I term heart meditation is a that if I commented earlier that we are the tool, we are the energy we bring to the spaces in all of our life, and certainly in a directed fashion when we're working with others in health encouraging ways. And so to have a daily practice, whether it's 1 minute or 20 minutes or an hour, where we are still and direct our focus to our own heartbeat and in stillness and in silence without any expectations or if we have a question or intention or something on our mind, to take that with us, but just to sit there and be receptive as we focus first on our heartbeat and just sit in stillness with that. Just as our brain operates electrically, we didn't get too far off on that, our heart operates magnetically, it attracts to us. And so whatever we need, our heartbeat, as we're focusing on our heartbeat, it's already broadcasting whatever our needs are, physical, mental, or anything we've taken to that space. And whatever we need will show up as a whole, and then we can unpack it with our minds and so forth. So having people be responsible for their own groundedness and developing, if they don't already have one, a practice of meditation that allows them to be a receptive vehicle is probably the most useful thing to have, because then I know if people have that, whatever needs to be brought to them for their own personal well-being or for their work in the world will show up. And then together we collectively unpack it and work with it as humanity moves forward into a greater sphere of who we're called to be.
Any final questions before we go today? I think lots of praise is coming for you in the chat, Christine.
I am curious, as a person who works in the education field and hears often about checklists and things we can measure and feedback and the intentionality, how you have navigated in the educational field what I would call wordless and less measurable things, how you have managed to be such an advocate for these things.
Well, like for all of us, it grows out of my personal experience, having dealt in those worlds for many years, and then recognizing that what they had was helpful, but not enough. It was incomplete. It wasn't that it was wrong, it was incomplete. And it's the invisible real. And because we've tended to, and in our science, look at what we could measure and see, observe, we were doing that thinking we were, with everything we could put in place, to think of ourselves as a separate observer. Even in science now, what we've come to recognize, we are participatory observers. We can't take ourselves out of it. And by the very act of our observing, we change the situation. And so it's still just at the infancy of its recognition, and certainly premature to call it acceptance in the larger sphere, but it's real. And the reason that it's becoming real and then more rapidly now is, I think as soon as we put it out there, as so many of you are kind of saying in your comments, it resonates with us because we recognize it in our own experience. It feels real. It's congruent with what we know in our experience. And so even if we didn't have words for it before, or even if we dismissed it, certainly consciousness has never been included in most of our research. I do a great, in my graduate teaching, that's something that all of my students struggle with as they struggle to put together dissertation or master's thesis projects that will satisfy the scientific community with some sort of measurable outcome of that these things are occurring, and that they shift people's experience and their physiology, the different physical factors that shift, and their way of thinking and their way of being in the world, and overall then their life satisfaction. And so what we're seeing in science is now not leaving behind quantitative measurement, but switching from quantitative to qualitative measurement, but of combining the two, of both and, of putting the two together to get a more complete picture of what's actually happening.
Well, thank you.
Thank
Which
you.
is hardly enough, but thank you.
we're learning together as we go of what that needs to look like and how to do it. It's coming.
But your voice is really needed, and it helps us to voice the same.
We all are, and as collectively we all put in our piece or pieces and collectively collaborate. And just as they're finding with vaccine development now, when we collectively collaborate instead of hogging information, we move forward much faster. So yes, we're all going forward, and I'm very hopeful and very excited to see where we go. And as much as possible, want for each of us to be intentional about creating what I think of as creating the world our hearts know is possible.
Can you just say that one more time?
When we're able to be intentional and learn more about this, we're always co-creating. But when we're able to be intentional about it, we can be intentional about creating the more beautiful worlds our hearts know is possible.
Thank you.
That seems like a beautiful spot to end our time together.
Yes.
Dr. Christine Bair, a heartfelt thank you for sharing your heart wisdom with us, your heart-centered wisdom with us, and for reminding us that we are interconnected. We're not separate. We're interdependent on each other and with our environment. And what a beautiful heart-centered message to leave with us. So much to ponder and reflect on. So such a blessing to have you with us today, and from all of our hearts to you. Thank you so much.
And right back at you. Thank you. I enjoyed it very much.
I'm just going to pull up a final screen here today. And two screens, actually, two slides. This is Dr. Christine Bair's contact information, and it will also be on the video. And just so that you're aware of some upcoming events for CanBeWell, there's some fundraising workshops coming up, and a portion of the proceeds of these workshops will go to the CanBeWell program. So Greg Webb's Personalize Your Nutrition and Supplements program is coming up in February, and Larry Green's goal setting workshop in March. So if you'd like more information, please contact the CanBeWell office. And our 2021 youth project, Nithya Pariani will be coming to present in April. So we look forward to that. And CanBeWell's 2021 Summit, Shifting into Wellness, is May 2nd to 9th, and it's online. There'll be early bird registration and savings. Keep an eye out for the details. So again, thank you so much to Dr. Christine Bair. Such a great privilege to listen to you today. And thank you to everyone for joining us. And may your day be filled with beautiful possibilities and heart-centeredness. Have a great day.